Let's review our Sunday school lesson for today. We are in the spring quarter for the months of March, April, and May 2026. And this spring quarter presents an engaging exploration of the social challenges historically faced by faithful Christians. We will reflect on how the church of today can embody Christ's presence in addressing similar issues. We're looking at unit number 1 for the month of March, entitled Fulfilling Our Obligation to Neighbors. This unit will challenge us to pursue the shared goals of love, respect, and peace within the home, the community, along with local and global relationships. Our lesson for today is lesson number 3 for March 15, 2026, entitled Give Generously. Our printed passage is Deuteronomy 15, verse 4 through 11, and Matthew 25, verse 42 through 45. I really want to key into Deuteronomy chapter number 15 today. But as we do it, I remind us that we're talking about our interaction with our neighbors. And Jesus was asked the question, who is my neighbor? In which we get the story of the Good Samaritan, in which one that was unlikely did all that he could do to help somebody else, even somebody else that did not necessarily treat him the same way. And Jesus' emphasis was that your neighbor is anybody that you can help. Now, I want us to keep that mindset, because as we look at Deuteronomy 15, we encounter a God who is preparing a people for a land that he will give to them. This people will be one nation that is truly up under God in the promised land of Canaan. So not only does God give them religious laws on how to worship, and not only does God give them sacrificial laws on how they are to sacrifice in worship to him, not only does he give them dietary laws, like we talked about on last week, what to eat, what not to eat, but he also gives them civil laws on how they were to interact with one another. Because they were an independent nation, God gave them civil laws of the land on how to interact with one another. And contrary to our contemporary and current thought, God gave laws for taking care of the less fortunate. Amen. Listen to what God says to Moses to give to the people when they get into the promised land. Verse number 4 is a beautiful verse, because it said, the poor you won't have to worry about in this land, because you're going to be blessed. You're going to be blessed because God will richly bless you, and there will be no need for the poor there. And verse number 7 through 11 tells us that if there be any poor there, here is God's law for us as Christians in our interaction with one another. Number 1, don't harden your heart. I must say today that when it comes to us talking about the United States of America, the states, talking about the USA, when it comes to us and our relationship with helping those who are less fortunate, we harden our hearts. We could care less about the hungry. We could care less about the homeless. We could care less about those who are in prison. We could care less about those who are suffering under financial weight. We could care less because our hearts have been hardened. But God says, do not harden your hearts. And secondly, he says, do not shut your hand. Again, we are guilty of being two things. We're guilty of being the richest nation in the world. And we're guilty also of shutting up our hands. We're guilty of it. You know, I'm troubled to learn that on one street, the White House sits, which represents everything of the USA, and even has a new millions of dollars put into a ballroom. But I'm troubled to know a couple of streets over is poverty in the richest nation on the world. Why? Because we have shut our hands and we have not helped. So what did God command to Moses for the people, his people, to do in interacting with one another? Thirdly, he says, open up your hand wide and lend whatever they have need of. Verse number 9, he said, don't you make any excuses either. They had that the seventh of 7 years, which was a celebration of Jubilee, which was a 50-year celebration. And it was a time that liberty was given. If you owed debt, if you were a captive, or somebody else had something that was yours, it had to be returned. You had to be free. It had to be canceled so that everything would start afresh. Even the land in that time, you didn't work it. Amen. You gave it a break. Amen. To allow it to produce more. God said, don't you even wait till that time to say no, whatever good you can do now, lend it to help. Now, as I close, there's a relationship found in verse number 11. It says, I command you that you shall open up your hand wide to your brother or to your fellow Israelite. Can I tell you something today? Until we get past the idea that we're all separate and that we're all divided, whether by ethnicity or whether by color or whether by belief, until we can see that we are all brothers, all belong to God, we'll never have the relationship that's needed to help somebody less fortunate. And I'm not talking about throw some crumbs to somebody. God here says, lend what they need, opening up your hand wide. You know, it's not throwing scraps out, but the finest stuff that you eat at your table, until relationship is there, you'll never invite somebody else to eat at your table. It's a deep truth, but it's a truth that we need to hear on today. We thank God for this lesson.